Hello, 531 class. Dr. Hastings here. Hope you're having a good start to the week. It is Monday, September 18th, after having a lovely weekend with some great weather. Hope you're energized and ready to roll into week 4. Okay, curriculum design. This is where we really start getting into the meat of this course and what this is about. This is not solely a curriculum design and course planning course, but let's just say at the core, that's big stuff for us, and relative to doing justice to the curriculum. So I just want to talk a few minutes about this in effect then too. Notice that I did put up a couple supplementary readings then this morning too, which I thought were good. We still have some relevant web links that are supporting this. And the DQ for this week is certainly more of an activity of applying yourself and trying to get your head into this. We warmed up last week with one assignment, personal philosophy. I'll grade that later this week. And with the DQ, as it pertains to then again, what makes sense? A big question has always been, what is the minimum competency for nursing practice and what should we be striving for? But now we're thinking about the curriculum design and organization itself, relative to programs. I'm probably focusing more on the undergraduate program than the graduate for this content, but we should be thinking broadly. Within that, we'll be more specific next week in terms of looking at objectives from the standpoint of program, but more from the perspective of course. And how do we create these, and how do we then organize a course that's going to fit into a curriculum? So, but for this week, as we're looking at this, we did again talk about philosophy last week and our values. It was important for us to take a moment, even for that arguably basic assignment. I wanted all of us to be warmed up to the idea of how self-awareness is important and that we have a philosophical grounding, because that's relevant to curriculum, relative to the path for implementation and for the evaluation piece. So, as per some other areas we've already addressed, the idea of big drivers, okay, the recommendations from experts and their consensus in terms of where we're going. So the IOM, Benner, all relevant to our thinking about curriculum, and then thinking about the process. And we think about it from a philosophical perspective. We certainly think about where, at Cedar Crest College, does a nursing major get grounded through the mission and goals of the college, let alone the big external accrediting bodies and other drivers, such as IOM and Benner, in support of this. So let's just say that our faculty believe there's a developing body of knowledge central to the discipline of nursing relative to the meta paradigm. And that's common for many different nursing programs. Certainly there are variations on that. There are some that are theoretically grounded in other even mid-level types of theories. But for our purposes, we're rolling with that. So we look at then within our nursing continuum, NLN as being a strong influence. We don't get accredited by NLN at this juncture. We're ACEN, and we're going for AACN and CCNE accreditation soon. But we're looking at, again, somewhat of a prescriptive process of what needs to be inherent in curricula. And I think one thing that's really good about NLN, they've had initiatives such as a toolkit approach for nurse educators to arrive at, again, the tools for supporting curriculum design. And that's something to look back on, in effect, then too, and peruse in their site. AACN, of course, then too, like I said, we're going to be moving towards accreditation with this entity. But in particular, of the 4 standards that they refer to when looking at accreditation for a program, Standard 3 is a big focus, looking at program quality with respect to curriculum and teaching practices. So that's an important consideration here when we think about curriculum design. ACEN, the current entity that we work with, similar in terms of the focus, but they state explicitly that their curriculum mandates their requirements for accreditation. What they're looking for, the curriculum supports achievement of end-of-program student learning outcomes and program outcomes. So, of course, we think about board passage, but also creating good clinicians. So we tend to think about that in the extension here with that grounding, the end of program learning outcomes and program outcomes consistent with safe practice in contemporary healthcare environments. We want to produce safe and effective nurses. So let's look at the model specifically. Again, I apologize if my little bit of video towards me is blocking some of this. So look at your slides. On the undergraduate level, there are models, of course, that drive all different levels of education, and from LPN on up. They are still professionally licensed, obviously diploma-based programs, associate's level program. You already examined a little bit of that last week when we were talking about, okay, well, with the BSN, minimum practice competency, does it make sense? Why would that be? We know there's a push for it. Does it seem reasonable when we consider the differences between these programs? So think about the curricular layout. Ultimately, they link back to scope and standards of practice at the level of the LPN as the vocational nurse or technical nurse. And then looking at diploma, associates, and BSN, well, they're all in the same cadre from National Council of State Boards of Nursing perspective, because they're all taking the same licensure exam and NCLEX. But we really need to think broadly about a professional curriculum like ours in particular. What are the things that sort of drive this moving forward? So certainly all diploma, associates, and BSN are influenced by the need for navigating a much more complex healthcare system as we move forward, and to have safe and effective outcomes for patients. But let's just say that progress, and again, I put in a link in for an ACN fact sheet. You know, what does it really mean when we look for that push for a higher standard for minimum practice competency? And what do we do to sort of implement the necessary, let's just say, foundation for what that type of curriculum would be that's really going to be beneficial towards creating, again, even better healthcare providers to enter a complex healthcare world. So in all that, you know, keep in mind, we're pushing for better practice competency. We're pushing for innovation, creativity, relative to how do we teach individuals as well to make sure that they can demonstrate competency in a clinical context, in a didactic context of taking NCLEX, all that. All right. So think about those kind of considerations. Let's just say, I'll look at here graduate just for a moment. The whole notion about graduate curricula, where is that grounding in effect then too? Realizing now the push is for DNP and clinical doctorates, and we'd already talked about that a little bit. Plus the CNL, sort of an interesting augmentation, I think, to practice in a given role. So look, just like for undergraduates with that minimum practice competency, the expectation for advanced practice roles and to support their need in our healthcare landscape and in society is high and higher, you know, the roles that we need to negotiate. So within all that, you know, you're now in a graduate program that does have these demands upon an appreciation of more complex roles and what we can do to meet the needs of our population relative to healthcare. Population health being a critical theme. All right, so the graduate standards do vary with program, and there's a myriad of programs, as you know, just like with all the tracks that we have. But, you know, it's important sort of to recognize those practice competencies. Oh, by the way, that NLN document, that 2010 one, I have not gotten clarity from the publishers on what's reproducible and what's not. I do have a copy. My hope is that if anybody wants to see that, I can put it out there. I just don't want to move forward with any copyright infringement kind of scenarios. That's why I don't have anything posted relative to that right now. So, but I have it. So if anyone wants to see that, and I think brief snippets I can sort of show. All right. Also, AACN, they have their practice documents for accreditation that keep getting updated. The most recent one, the 2013. I think they did another tweak this past year too that will be coming online then too to be viewable. Now look, the competencies are formed by essentials. We need to have essentials for practice, undergraduate level, graduate level. We're talking about here. Think about it from the standpoint of a crosswalk type of scenario. You've got essentials for practice. that should match up with scope and standards, but sometimes you need to have this a crosswalk to delineate, okay, what are the actual standards that are being met? What are the goals and objectives and outcomes that we want to see? So I have a couple here that AAC and CCNE has provided for undergraduate as well as master's, and even the DNP that they've got up there. So consider that. Take a look. I have those links elsewhere then too. And then ACN, same thing, basically. Oh, and of course, since we're talking for most of you at the graduate level of nurse practitioner, also NOMF, they have their set of standards out there that do need to be adhered to then too, relative to programs and program outcomes. All right, so look, we're focusing now on design. What are we concerned with? Look at program needs, but think about this contextually. What are the things that get us there? Important competencies, and possible designs and learning activities to support teacher-learner positive outcomes. We're focusing on learning. If a learning-centered focus, we think about, not just what our learners need to achieve, but how do we get them there, so the design and the learning activities are relevant. Identifying limitations are important, certainly from the standpoint of doing accreditation prep, and we're starting to do that at Cedar Crest right now. We just had one accreditation done for ACN, but now as we prepare for AAC and CCNE, we're going to have to do another self-study, as referred to in that preparation. And our resources. Those things are important, in effect, then, too. So we're thinking broadly here in curriculum design. Again, like I said, next week we'll drill down more to the course level. But in all this, formulate curriculum goals. We touched upon this before, relative to a program. They include philosophical approaches, why we focus on that philosophy assignment, but they're really thinking about the outcomes. What do we want our learners to achieve? So the goals should reflect the broad abilities of grads, and they are basically a public statement of what the program graduates will be like when they do graduate, and hopefully they'll pass boards. It'll be or certification exams. That's the big first step. But how will they perform? Are they ready to be in the healthcare landscape? Design the curriculum. In all that, consider level goals. If you're thinking undergraduate, that's why I said there's a bias towards undergraduate. Think about junior level, senior level. Many professional programs are junior and senior level, like at Cedar Crest for the undergraduate. Some start at the sophomore level. Consider the nursing courses, support courses, the electives, all of which ultimately contribute to our having good program outcomes achieved, and the sequencing of how the courses should run. Obviously, we think from our experience in undergraduate nursing programs, the idea behind a fundamentals or a concepts base at the foundation, and then going through Med-Surg 1 and then Med-Surg 2 with higher level complexity, and a lot of those specialty courses woven in within or around those. So that gives us some sense of how sequencing can go. And then how are we going to deliver these courses, be it classroom, in a brick and mortar setting, or online? And then the policies that go along with that. So we should have at least an idea now, or think forward about course descriptions and general course goals relative to that. But next week we'll talk more specifically about the objectives and learner outcomes within those courses. So thinking broadly this week program, but then we'll think down to specific course development and with objectives. But the DQ gives you a little bit of appreciation for that, moving forward then too. So, okay, that's it for me. I appreciate your attention. I wish everybody a great week.